Hello and welcome to the Help My Wealth podcast, Money Rules or Money Rules. Here at Help My Wealth, we are all about empowering financial success in our community of listeners. We hope you find today's topic both informative and helpful. Hi and welcome back to the Help My Wealth podcast, Money Rules, Money Rules. I'm your host, Stephen Logan, and with me, as always, is Hamish Ferguson. Hamish, thank you for coming.
More than welcome.
And today we have Rod McLean. Thank you for coming with us.
Oh, my pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
I believe our first health professional.
It is our first health professional.
Yeah, there we
That's
go.
right. That's right.
Right.
Look, it's December and we're heading towards Christmas, and we thought, let's pivot away from, just finances, and we're going to talk about a bit of health and wellness.
Absolutely.
So look, Rod has been a chiropractor and a kinesiologist for the last 40 years. He's passionate about health, and he works with clients of all ages to develop good health plans and long-term health goals that will change the current direction that many of us and many of them may be heading, and allow us to walk in a holistic health lifestyle. Rod wants to see his clients set up in health goals alongside financial goals and walk along the path to healthy financial retirement. Rod is here today to foster this idea and to introduce to us the idea of investing into our own health and maintaining our own bodies and getting good advice to keep and improve our health. So Rod, thank you so much for coming and spending the time with us.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So look, please tell our audience, some people may not be aware, what is a chiropractor and a kinesiologist? What do you actually do?
So chiropractic is, I guess it's been around for about more than 100 years, but chiropractic is a way of getting your spine to work well and to maintain the connection between your body and your brain, basically. So chiropractors generally crack people's backs, and they're good at that. They're trained in that. But there's actually more than 200 different types of chiropractic, so it can vary just enormously. And there's probably half a dozen so-called soft or low-force techniques that don't involve back cracking, and I'm one of them. I haven't cracked anyone's back for 40 years. I use an activator, which I haven't brought with me to show you, which gives an impulse that's about 300 times faster than you can do that by hand. And so it's a very light and fast but effective way of working with people.
And a bit less invasive, I would assume.
Yeah, people, especially people who don't like being cracked, really like activators. But people just like activators, full stop.
Yeah, great. And kinesiology, explain that to us.
Wow. So kinesiology in science is the study of movement, and kinesiology in medicine is really the study of motion, as in the motion of your body. Kinesiology in natural therapies is really, it's a term, it's a misterm, because it's really a way of actually accessing indicators in your body, asking yes/no questions of someone's system, finding out where to do things and when to not do things, and to put some sort of order or organisation into the work. So it's a way of getting feedback. It's a feedback mechanism, really.
So just to take that one step further, is there a common or an easy example you can give us that sort of, that you've had to deal with before in terms of what that feedback looks like
I guess a very classic way, and it's not really the way I work, but a classic way. If someone had a strong arm, and I could run my hand down their back, and if I came to a part of their back where there was a problem, their arm would just go weak, and I could work out what direction made it strong, and then I could use an activator to adjust them in that direction. So that's a way of getting indicators from someone's system as to what it actually needs.
So you can really combine the kinesiology and the chiropractic into one, holistic experience.
Kinesiology is like a guidance system.
Yeah, fantastic.
There are actually hundreds of different kinesiology systems. It's really diverse as well. Yeah.
Okay. And so to take us back, so 40 years in the business of chiropractic. So kinesiology hasn't been quite 40 years, or you've been doing both for a similar length of time?
Probably about 35 for kinesiology.
Okay, so
fair while.
Fair while. So what made you get into chiropractic in the first place, and what was the training like then? Was it similar to what it is today, or?
So I grew up my mother was a medical doctor, my father was an engineer, and I always thought that I would do medicine. And I didn't know that natural therapies existed, and I guess around the time that I would have started medicine, I became interested in natural medicine. And so I well, I took some time off between school and university, but I went to university, I guess, when chiropractic became registered, and so I did a degree in anatomy and went to the Sydney College of Chiropractic, which then became Macquarie. And I'm sure that the things are much better taught now than they were then. There was a bit of a difference between university and college. I think that it was in some ways, because it's a very hands-on. It's almost like a trade where you learn how to work with the body, and there's a lot of theory, but there's a lot of doing that happens, and that's what I've been doing for 40 years.
So I'm guessing there's probably some, I don't know if I'd say interesting stories, but engineer and doctor,
yeah.
And of course kinesiology almost, I don't know, it feels like that engineering in the chiropractic world is almost kinesiology, right?
I would say that the structure is the engineering, like spines and so that the kind of skeletal stuff is the structure. Kinesiology is really more body mind.
Yeah, okay.
The influence of being able to access what's deep in your system and is affecting your whole body. And I guess that's a big interest of mine, which it's not the easiest thing to talk about. It weaves its way into what I do.
And so growing up, engineering tends to be quite analytical and having a mother as a doctor as well. I'm sure there was some quite high level conversations going on at home at times. How did you cope with that as a child?
Well, I grew up in the Snowy Mountains, so the whole thing, that was an incredibly practical sort of environment. There were all these people just doing all this stuff, and it was. And everyone I went to school with went to university, because I didn't realise I was basically living in a university town, because everyone's father was an engineer and they all had degrees. so it was really unusual, and it was the most cosmopolitan town in the world. So it was quite an interesting place to grow up in. I thought it was pretty ordinary.
Well, we do. We're all in our own little bubbles.
Yeah, it was a bubble. It definitely was a bubble. Yeah,
and a lot of that was due to like the hydro, it was the hydro scheme and things like that. Okay,
totally. Yeah,
it's actually probably a bit of a fascinating sort of part of life to look back on.
It's very important to me, actually. Yeah.
Okay.
So like we always talk to people about their professions and how that's actually affected their life. So as a chiropractor and kinesiologist, how has that affected you when it comes to your planning of your health and well-being, into the future?
Well, we live in a world where we're really serious about things. We're quite proactive when it comes to aircraft and stuff like that. But when it comes to ourselves, it's like we close that book and we take a different book off the shelf and we just think, I'm okay, everything's okay. And we just really have no idea about what's going on, or we think that pain is a good guide. So we think that pain equals problem and no pain equals nothing. There's nothing happening. And bodies don't really work like that. We have systems that should, like your spine's like a chain with lots of links, and if something happens to you, like you fall down the stairs and you don't break something, well, if you have some joints that aren't moving quite like they should afterwards, you'll never know. So you'll just adapt, and then something else will happen in your life and you'll adapt. And 40 years later, the adaptations will probably become arthritic and you'll be old before your time. So I guess being a chiropractor, and you start to see what actually happens behind the scene when people have accidents, what they experience and what you find are quite different things. And I've had a lot of accidents in my time. I've done a lot of skiing, and I've done a lot of work in trying to mitigate that with varying degrees of success.
I mean, skiing is the ultimate sport of basically saying you almost are told you have to fall over to improve.
I don't fall over anymore. I don't want to fall over. My body says don't fall over.
I found that with, going between skiing and snowboarding. Like snowboarding's a falling over sport. Like you have to be really good not to fall over. And by the end of the day, you are just so sore.
If I was young, I'd probably snowboard, but no way. No. I'm not going near that. Yeah.
And so, when it comes to being a chiropractor and being a kinesiologist, so what are some of the misconceptions you think people have had around that field?
Well, I don't think that people have really heard of kinesiology much, but with chiropractors, one of the difficulties has been that medicine has such a really negative view of chiropractic that they kind of try to keep them out of the loop. Sort of medicine and physiotherapy were kind of attached to each other, and they're really anti-chiropractic, which is just strange because everyone has a role to play in people's health, or everyone has a role that they can play. I did the question again.
So I was just saying, do people come to you with misconceptions, or do people talk to you with misconceptions around what a chiropractor is?
People come because they're in pain.
Yeah.
And they want to not be in pain. And getting people to be interested in their health is quite challenging because
they're there for the pain, but they don't want to just fix that and then forget everything else.
They think the pain is the only game
that's
there, and so it's quite difficult to get people to think about or to actually be interested in the idea of the impact. Yeah,
and I guess from what you're saying, so it sounds like chiropractic has had to really not rely on probably traditional referral paths and things like that from doctors and other bits and pieces, because it's sort of felt like it's been out on its own for a lot of its history. Would that be right?
Yeah, it's been quite marginalised. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think that's changing now?
I think that medicine is less negative.
Yes,
but I think they just don't really care.
Yes.
So I guess it's improved because it's not negative, but not many medicos would refer to chiropractors.
Yeah, I must say, if you talk to people, there's a lot of people that have used chiropractors, but it tends to be a friend refers you and says, "Oh, you need to go and see my chiropractor Rod. He's amazing. For this reason, he helped me with whatever." More so than say a GP saying, "You've torn your ligament. You need to go and talk to Rod and go from there."
Yeah, that's definitely the way it works.
Yeah, I mean, if it's all right, I'd like to share a small story, hopefully. So, when I was about 29, I actually injured my back, and so the traditional path, workers' comp, you go off and see a doctor, and they talk about whether they want to slice you up and
surgery.
Yeah, that's right. And I still remember, and I think the guy, I can't remember his name now, but this is 25 years ago. He was probably one of the leading neurosurgeons or back surgeons in Newcastle at the time, and he said, "Oh, Hamish, you're not bad enough to have an operation on you." And I said, "Okay, well, doc, what do I do? Because I'm still in pain. Physio, chiro, osteo, where do I go?" And he goes, "I don't know."
That sums it up.
Start with one. Work from there.
I remember looking at him saying, "But you're supposed to be this person," and he said, "Hamish, all I know how to do is slice and dice." All right, so I don't know. If you ask me the difference between a physio and a chiro, I've got no idea. So
I'm really glad he said that because that's really helpful, I think, for them to go, "I don't know," as opposed to pretend that they do when they don't.
And my brother-in-law's a physio, and for a long time there, this gentleman's moved away. He was a chiro, or he is a chiro, but they were best friends. And I remember saying to my brother-in-law at some point, "Do you know what John does?" And he goes, "No idea." Don't tell him I don't know.
Well, that's funny.
But I actually think they were a little bit frightened to ask each other because.
So that's, I guess, in my experience of going to, say, seminars with their chiropractors and physios, they just get on. I mean, they just, on a person-to-person basis, they just get on. They do the same sort of work for people. They're wanting to help people. And
well, you're looking at the same injury from a different angle, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So would you think often someone who has been to a physio may also then need to go to a chiropractor, and vice versa? Someone been to a chiropractor may also then need to go to a physio?
Well, yes, especially if something's missing.
Yeah.
So because someone might come to me and what I'm doing is covering some of the bases but not all of them, and maybe somebody else needs to cover them. So, I mean, different strokes for different folks.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And do you find that it's quite common for people to have come to you and And it's actually they need more than one professional.
Yes, that's definitely. Yes.
All right, so they might have gone to a physio and they might not realise that the physio might have fixed part of the issue but not all of the issue, and then they come to you looking for some more answers, and then you might have that second piece of the puzzle. Yes?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I know that the work that I do helps other people's work better. Yeah. Because some of what I do is not very common, and so if I'm dealing in areas that nobody else is, then that will help other people's work better.
Yeah, and I think if we can get health professionals to really start working in together, you're going to get a much better holistic, wellness and health for the client, aren't you?
Definitely.
Yeah. So look, I was actually very interested by a conversation I had with you prior to this podcast, and you're talking about, because obviously we're a financial podcast, and that's our main theme and drive. But one of the reasons why we brought you onto the show is because you sort of said to us, look, most people agree that setting up financial goals is important. Setting up yourself for retirement is important. I'm 40 now, I'm going to be 65. I need to have X amount of dollars, to help me in that. Yet they don't tend to have the same future outlook and the same, perspective when it comes to their health and their wellness. And you said something that really struck me, where you said, that they find that by the time they get to retirement, the bounty or the financial reward that they've actually created for themselves is actually not able to be utilised as well as it could be, because they've actually never created a wellness or health goal for themselves for retirement. And whether that's your 20 or whether you're 30 or 40 or 50, it's that whole idea of going, okay, finances is one area where we need to really have good goals and good strategies. But if we get to the point of retirement and you're unable to utilise it because you're so unwell, then it's in a way been a little bit of a waste, hasn't it?
It's neglect.
Yeah.
Like it's well, I mean, this sounds very harsh, but it's like ignorant neglect, because people don't know that they don't know that all these aspects of their system are just disappearing. If the camera can pick this up, this is what happens in life. You peak when you're 20 to 30, and then you decline.
Yes.
And if you don't think you decline, that doesn't stop you from declining. So all sorts of things are going downhill.
Just saying, I have to disagree with you. I'm 50 and I'm just peaking now.
Yeah,
so,
that's almost certainly true. There's always the exception.
Hamish, peaking now, or did you peak at 29?
Oh, I plateau.
No. I thought I was holding it together well until about 46, 47, and all of a sudden, just wasn't shooting those basketball as well, and there's a whole range of things that started going on. So,
but you see, the thing that happens is that when you start actually thinking that you're getting old, you think that's beginning, but it's not. It's been beginning.
It started at 29.
Yeah. And then so if you're 50, you think, oh, I'm getting old. But between 60 and 70, there's a really big change. And like I'm 70 in 5 months' time, and lots of things hurt. I mean, it's impacting, and I do a lot of work to try to prevent that. So yes, having goals, and I guess the thing is to be doing things as opposed to not doing things, to just be letting things slide because life is busy. And if there isn't someone or something that's bringing it to your attention, and I think financial stuff is the same, because if you have a financial person who is advising you on a path, you're much more likely to follow that path than to do well than if you're trying to do it all yourself. And I mean, life's busy.
Yeah. And the earlier you start with that financial journey, the better you're going to be. And it's the same for health and wellness, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the camera can picture this, but this is the accumulation of wealth.
Yes.
And this is when it happens in your life. It doesn't start at your peak. It starts after your peak, and then it finishes probably at the age 60, 65.
I mean, have you had a lot of clients come to you that are, they've got their finances in order, they've got their world in order from that point of view, but for their health point of view, it's just declining rapidly, and they're unable to really enjoy the benefits of that?
Yes, so that certainly happens. An example is a guy I've known for a really long time, who was incredibly good professionally, and and in creating wealth. I don't know, he's maybe worth $50 or $100 million, like really a lot of money. And he's always looked after his body, and he's an incredibly good skier. And he's got Parkinson's. So if you have car accidents, if you get cancer, you can't really mitigate against those things. But the fact that he looked after himself and then got Parkinson's is really different to someone who, if he was overweight, if he had a terrible diet, if he wasn't active in his life and he got Parkinson's, he would be really in a bad state. So that's kind of an example of both, of someone who looked after themselves but they had a big intervention that's really life-changing and probably going to be life-ending. But I have all sorts of people who, like, if you have money, then you have freedom to do a lot of things. But if you're in constant pain, then that's not great. Or if you can't play with your grandchildren because you can't bend down.
So look, someone comes to you, I would assume most people would come to you for a specific thing, like you said, a pain.
Pain.
Yeah, and you want to take them through that process. I mean, obviously you can help them with that pain and that's the short-term goal, but where do you start? Like, how do you take them on that journey of going, this isn't just about your knee or your back?
So if someone comes to me because they've got a sore neck or a sore arm, one of the things I'll do is get them to turn their head. And sometimes they're like this. That's it. I've had surfers in who were 30 who that was as far as they could turn. Like, they could turn like that, but they couldn't turn that. And they didn't know. They didn't know that their neck was actually working really, really, really poorly. So I examine people in all sorts of ways. I don't just work on where they're sore. I work on what's happening in the balance of the whole system. And if there are anomalies that show up, then I want to show them that there are all these things that aren't working well, and that's really a red flag for what's going to happen in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, 30 years' time. And then they have to then be interested in, or to take that seriously, because some people just don't believe that it matters in any way. And some people go, wow, okay, and then they get quite serious.
I think it's a bit like I had a masseuse that I used to go and see when I had a sore back, and it was amazing how often the area that was in pain was not actually what was causing the problem. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And I think it's a bit like that. Someone comes to you and says, "Oh, my shoulder's sore or my neck's sore," but how often is it related to something totally different? Like, that's where the pain is. But the actual mechanics of the body and the spine is causing that pain to be referred from somewhere else.
Yes, and it also might be just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Because if you put your hands on someone's shoulders, they might go, oh, that's so sore, but they didn't think it was sore. It's just that their shoulders are so close to being locked up. But because they're not locked up, they don't know that they just think that there's nothing there, like there's no tension there. But so, because people are just really unaware, people have very strong views on how they are, and often the views are based on just the fact that that's how they think they are. So they need an umpire. They need someone outside to show them a direction, or to ask them if they want to know things.
Do you find, Rod, I don't know if this is something that you can bring to the front of your brain or anything, but has there been any research that you know of that's been done that sort of talks about, if I look after myself, right, from a chiropractic point of view, or just a body point of view, some basic maths about what it might save somebody in the future from future operations or anything like that? Is it?
Oh, I'm sure there is, but I don't know. I can't put my fingers on that sort of information.
But do you come across people where, sometimes you go, okay, I'm trying to treat something now, they're in their late 50s or 60s, and they're headed for, or maybe you don't, but, there's a risk of an operation or some significant expense or disability that's going to come off the back of that, and you go, geez, I wish you came and see me 20 years ago.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah?
Certainly. I guess it's a bit like the question, when's the best time to get financial advice, and that is, I guess when you get your first job or when you're 20. What's the second best time? Well, it's right now. So if someone comes in and they're kind of like the boat's leaving, then start now. And and get what they have to work as well as possible. And if they're having a difficulty in that area, then they're much more likely to listen. I mean, people get quite shocked at times, and when because I guess I've become quite good at unpacking just how things are for people, just what they're doing or what they're not doing. That might be actually really important for them, and if it is important for them, then it creates a change.
And have you got any favourite stories of clients, obviously not mentioning any names, where you sort of gone, okay, this particular person came to me and like what you were saying, couldn't move their neck, or, you know, they had limited movement or something along those lines, where, you know, over a course of maybe 1, 2, 3 years, you know, that person's been able to significantly change?
Oh, there are so many stories. I will say I really like working with older people because very small changes in function make a big impact on the quality of their lives. And old people, and I guess old people is kind of 70 up, but I've worked on people who are in their 90s. But old people, when they shuffle in often, they walk out taller and they walk out faster. So they just move better and they're more erect, and because this is what happens to old people.
Yeah, they're really hunched over and
for a whole lot of reasons, but one of the big reasons is that they don't know it's happening, plus they're always looking down because they don't want to fall over. And when they stand up, they don't stand up straight because there's nothing to stand up straight for. They're thinking about where they're going to go, and just unpacking things like that can make a really big impact in their lives. And also people who can't move their neck because they can't move their neck because they don't move their neck, and they don't move their neck because they can't move their neck. So and that's a decreasing thing. They're just shutting down. And if you challenge those things, then things improve. If you challenge your balance will improve. If you don't challenge your balance, then if you fall in the bathroom, it might end your life or totally change your life. If you don't challenge your flexibility, if you don't challenge your strength, I mean, strength just falls off people when they're in their 70s. Yeah. And if you challenge it, it still gets less, but it's not a runaway train. Yeah.
Okay. And so tell me, you know, I would say probably the majority of our viewers or listeners are younger. They're sort of in their, you know, 20s to 30s. What's your advice to them, you know, sort of saying, radio, if you want to create a health and wellness plan from now until you retire, how would you go about doing it?
I guess there are really lots of ways you can do it. One would be to if you join a team, like if you joined a team sport, so if you play touch football, if you're a hockey, or if you joined a team, then you have a commitment to the team, and so you're likely to actually do that for a long period of time. If you joined a gym, especially a gym that had some trainers in there that were good, then your chances of continuing to do that are actually quite good. If you do things like yoga, because yoga is a real flexibility thing, then you might become connected to a community that would have so that there's some continuity, because you have things like Christmas and then you don't go back. And if people are really interested, I mean, they can go to, if they would go to a chiropractor who's interested in this sort of thing, or a physio who's interested in this sort of thing, or an exercise physiologist who's interested in these sorts of things, they can give programs. And if someone's motivated because they've got a problem, then they'll probably go to a professional. But if they're listening to this podcast because they have a financial interest, then there's just so much that they can do themselves. They need to do things that challenge their strength, that challenge their flexibility, and that challenge their cardiovascular fitness. I mean, they're really basic things, but they can just disappear out of your life when you have children and commitments and work, and you start taking your kids to things. But you stop doing things.
Well, it's like the old analogy of servicing your car, isn't it? You know, like you can't just keep driving your car and not put any energy or money back into it. The tyres will go bald, the engine loses its oil, all these things.
There's a consequence.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
But I mean, one of the reasons why people are not very good at doing these things, which is, I guess, why superannuation is now compulsory, because that makes people do things. And so lots of things are compulsory to force people to be proactive, but being proactive with your body is not compulsory. And so it's really capturing people's interest or having them be. So if someone, say, if their parent really goes down, or if they have friends who have died at 50 from a heart attack, then that gets people's attention. If people are interested, then they can do things themselves that make a really big difference, because the difference between doing something and doing nothing is actually massive. Yeah.
So I guess, if a tennis ball can work on a horse, geez, it'd do wonders on me.
Exactly. You just put it in a nutshell.
So people understand where you're coming from there. We had the conversation prior to the podcast saying that I knew of someone who was a horse chiropractor, and Rob was saying that they use tennis balls as their actuators to click them into place. So look, Rod, is it true that walking can't be understated? If you talk to health professionals, they always say walking seems to be something that comes up a lot. Even 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, half an hour a day. What's your opinion in regards to that as being just that sort of thing that you do as a regular, small thing every day?
I think that the effect of that on your physical health is enormous. Yeah. But on your mental health, it's also enormous.
Yes.
And if you walk outside, then that's a really important thing as well, because it's very easy to live in an internal environment. You live at home, you get in your car, you go to an office, and you're just really divorced from the world if you're going.
Yeah. I think walking is also good in relation, like you mentioned with your mental health, but, if you're walking by yourself, great, put on a podcast or music or whatever else, but walking with someone else as well actually, deepens that relationship and actually keeps it going, whether it be with your partner or a friend or whatever else.
Relationships are probably one of the most important things for well-being. Yeah, there's really lots of research that shows that. So anything that helps foster relationships, like walking with someone, playing in a team, all of those things, going to a gym where you know people, but also just having good relationships in your work, in your family, in your life. Yeah.
If I can, I want to change tack slightly, all right? So we've talked a lot about health, and obviously you've talked about that you're not far off cracking your 70th birthday. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So, and so from a work point of view, you've been self-employed for most of that journey. Yeah. And I mean, look, we often hear people talk about longevity and life expectancy and things like that. And so, and it sounds like you're still quite passionate about what you do. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
So I guess thinking about, your career and what you're passionate about, and then thinking about, I guess, to an extent, money and how you've managed your career, are there any, I guess, philosophies or thought processes that you would, want to impart to listeners as to, how you've been able to manage that? What's that journey been like for you?
Are there things that I could do better? Yes. Yes, there are. There are things that I could do better. If I was starting again, I would have a mentor. Absolutely. BNI wasn't around when I started, but I would join BNI. Absolutely. I would find a business partner. I've been in solo practice for 40 years, and it's a really silly thing to do. And I mean, I need someone else who generates ideas and is walking down a common path. So I guess I've always been passionate about what I do, and I've never been particularly interested in business as such, and that's not a very good position to be in if you're a business person.
Well, it's really common that people come into self-employment with a technical ability.
Yes, that's true.
So,
absolutely.
And can underestimate, I guess, the almost the need to be a jack of all trades when you're being self-employed, and how all of those other fields are really sciences within themselves, aren't they?
Absolutely.
And just to pause you for a sec, so BNI, you mentioned that, and some people might not know, what BNI is. So would you like to have a crack at explaining, what BNI is for you and why it's made a difference?
So BNI is Business Networking International, but it's so there are BNI groups, and in a group, and there might be between 20 and 40 professionals or lines of business in a group. There's only one of each, so there's only one chiropractor, there's only one lawyer generally, and the group is formed in order to support each other, and it's a referral-based group, and because everybody has their own database of contacts, then everyone starts to get access to everybody else's contacts, and it's really based on trust, that you get to know the other people actually quite well, and if you trust them, you'll refer to them. But it's also this ocean of support. There are all these people that you can ask, how do I do this, or what did you do in this situation, or
have you come across this problem, or
totally. How do you hire someone? How do you fire someone? I'm in trouble, like, what can I do? And there'll be people who will help you. So BNI for support, especially for small operators, is just invaluable. And it's been around, I guess, for about 30 years, and probably not that long in Australia. But I joined about 15 years ago, and it's been really helpful.
And so you being a sole trader for 40 years and, doing your own business and things like that, if we're looking back, what are some of the changes you would have made to your business, or what are the things you've learned over that time that you wish you had have been able to do at the beginning?
I would have had a coach. I would have gone to someone and said, how do I set this up, and how do I do this from a business point of view? Because from a clinical point of view, that's not a business point of view.
Yes.
And for me, there was, I guess, quite a mismatch because that turns helping people into making money, and so that's not an easy thing for a lot of therapists, especially natural therapists. Often they have just ideas that aren't very commercial. So yes, I would.
It's like the artist. It doesn't know how to price their work, like it's that whole, and
it's really
a lot of these skills are very, if they're not necessarily mathematical, and it's important to recognise that people are built differently, and they have different strengths and weaknesses, and if you go into health, my guess is most people that go into health, they go into it not because they want to make $1 million, they go into it because they want to help people.
Absolutely, yeah. And my friend who has Parkinson's, he came from a business family. Like they were doing business from when he was a little boy, and he just knew how to. I mean, he's really good at running things, but he's just really good at business. And he used to do business on people that he met when at university.
You could see the brain ticking as soon as he met somebody.
He just saw opportunities,
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally different.
Because one of the things, I guess, we would say we're passionate about as well is that, you can put investments in place, right, and you can manage your cash flow well, and you can be disciplined, but at the end of the day, actually managing your career, all right, and managing that longevity of career and doing something that is sustainable is quite important. And, it's great to hear you talk about the things that you would do differently, but to be able to say, as a self-employed person, I coped for 40 years and well, you haven't admitted it yet. You haven't gone belly up once.
No.
Right? So that's actually, high five. That's well done.
I have people who come in, have been coming for 30 years, and I have one person who's been coming to see me for 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah, which is rare. That is really wow. And there are some families where they're just all these different people, like just, or I discover that like just the roots of a tree, there are all these interconnections that I actually didn't realise. So people that have their children and their grandchildren. So that's really lovely, and it's almost like a small town type situation, that getting to know
Look,
that gets
absolutely.
people. Yeah.
I mean, we joke in the office about there's a particular family where there's a mum and dad, right, and then there's 4 boys, and the dad and the 4 boys all have very similar voices, and they're all clients, right? So people will pick up the phone and they'll start talking to these guys, and you get 5 minutes into it, and you go, oh, that's Bob.
The right one.
Now it finally worked out it's Bob. Because they just ring up and assume that you know who they are. And there's a few networks like that. And so, and I think it's important that when, people are thinking about the professionals that they actually are picking, that it's these careers or these businesses, again, you're there to help people. And it's not about necessarily just, can I squeeze an extra quid out of you? I want this story of being able to look after you for 20, 30, 40 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And your children and your grandchildren and your friends and your family. And look, we've had other, small business people and sole traders and so forth on the show before. And I think one of the things that's interesting, and you've brought this up, is that whole idea of recognising what lane you're in. You're a good practitioner. That doesn't mean that you're a good business person.
No, definitely not.
It doesn't mean that you're a good marketer.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're a good at setting goals for yourself or even achieving those.
Or self-advocate, really, in ways.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Or being an advocate of you and saying, look how good my company and I am. And so it really is about getting the right people for the right job, isn't it? And not feeling like you have to do it all. And I think there's a lot of sole traders and small business people out there, and they are doing it all. One of my favourite sayings is, for every yes, there is a no. And if you're saying yes to doing the marketing, if you're saying yes to doing the business, the finance and the accounting side of it, if you're saying yes to doing the goal setting and the future direction planning of where the business is going, then you're saying no to a lot of other things, which are probably the areas that you enjoy, which is being a practitioner or whatever the reason why you got into that business. So I think one of the things we try to talk to our sole traders and our business people about is that concept of actually going, I really should have got this, covered 10 years ago. I would be in a different position now, and I'd probably be happier now.
Definitely, yeah.
So I guess sticking with the self-employment, if I can, because I often hear, osteos and physios, possibly not so much chiros, but actually I'm thinking there is an example where people sometimes don't understand that it's actually can be quite a taxing role on the body as well, like because you're using your hands a lot, and it is actually a reasonably physical role.
It isn't for me, but it is for most chiropractors, because the way I work is not particularly physical.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
but some chiropractors can't continue because it's too hard on their bodies. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So out of those 200 models of chiropractic, was it 200 roughly? Yeah. So you've obviously, and as life's gone on, have you always stuck with that same sort of, rhythm that's allowed you to be sustainable, or have you had to modify that over time?
It's always been that way, but I also smashed both my hands before I became a chiropractor.
So you had to.
Well, I probably would have just stupidly gone on a different course with chiropractic if it wasn't that I worked when I was a student for an activator chiropractor, and she was an activator chiropractor and a kinesiologist, and they just fitted me. So that was easy. But if I had to mainly use, because you can see I can't bend my hand properly, if I had to do that, I would not have lasted.
So for chiropractors, can they change style easily? In terms of you've got a philosophy like style number 86, right? So, and I want to move to style number 94.
They might go, I can't do this anymore. I have to find something easier, and they often end up with activators.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Right. So the adjustment is manageable for most people, right, in that profession if they want to go down that path.
Yeah, because there are so many different ways of doing chiropractic, one of the good things about it is that you can find something that actually really fits you. It's like going into a clothing store and finding things that actually really fit. And so if you find something that fits you, it probably does work for you physically. But if you end up with a problem, then you have choices. Yeah.
Look, this is a subject that I didn't want to bring up, but I think would be remiss in health and wellness to not. Where does diet fit in, do you think, with,
Diet is one of the most important things, especially things that cause inflammation. So people who have arthritic conditions, I mean, people my age generally have arthritic conditions, and I certainly do. If you have a highly acidic diet or a high sugar diet, then absolutely you're going to be in a lot more pain. People who are really overweight, then there are just all sorts of health markers that suffer because of that. So diet is really important. Diet's much more important than exercise when it comes to body size and things like that. So, like the Biggest Loser, they lose their weight because they control what they eat in the program, not because they just beat them to death, which they do. But so diet's huge. Diet's really huge. But the dietary advice that I give is very small in the scheme of things. I would send people to naturopaths. But that's sort of because that's what they do.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the problems we've got in our society now is the diet fads. Every year there's a new fad that someone takes on or does, and it ends up being, you can lose weight for a short period of time, but is it a lifestyle? And really in the end, from the dietitians and from other health professionals that I've talked to, it's really about creating a long-term lifestyle choice that you can actually stick to. Do you know what I mean? Not about only eating protein or only counting carbs or only doing this or only doing that.
But eating fresh food and clean living is really important because so much stuff that's in supermarkets is packaged and it's just full of non-food and it's quite easy to start having just larger and larger proportions of your diet. Like if you make a schnitzel, there's 4 or 5 ingredients. But if you buy a schnitzel, sometimes there's 25 or 30 ingredients in it. They don't come from chickens. They come from factories, and that's actually really unhealthy. So I think that diet's really, really important. And yes, there's a lot of crap diets around. I like Michael Mosley. I think Michael Mosley is really helpful, and his stuff is very science tested. So I think
he's a naturopath.
No, he's a medical doctor, but he's really a broadcaster. He's been a broadcaster for about 40 years. But he's come up with all sorts of different views. I guess he can just mine the world because he has access to all of these institutions where people are doing research into diet or exercise, and then he'll get some subjects and he'll put them through a program, and then they'll monitor them. They'll do blood tests or they'll do all sorts of things, and so they just show the effect that it has on people in short periods of time, showing how doable some of these things are. Yeah,
he's been quite good at taking people that are either diabetic or about to become diabetic, and in a very short period of time, moving them back to being pre-diabetic.
Yeah, he started with himself.
Yeah, exactly.
And he was a thin man. See, he was a thin, overweight person, which is ironic. Yeah.
Yes, and I think the Fast 800 is his main book, isn't it?
Oh, that's part of his library.
Yeah.
The Fast 800 is one of his latest books.
Yes.
But intermittent fasting was where he kind of started.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and goes from there.
Yeah. So he's really good. So yes, so I recommend things like Michael Mosley's stuff to people. Yeah.
And I think the reason why Michael Mosley's good and why most people, especially health clinicians, often refer to him is because he's researched.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's about lifestyle for him. It's not about losing an immense amount of weight in a short period of time. It's about how do you keep this going for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and make it a lifestyle rather than it being a short, quick, I want to lose 10 kilos for a wedding.
Definitely. It's the lifestyle that's the key. Definitely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the industry of chiropractic, right? So obviously it's come from being possibly the black sheep in the in the family,
in the outer paddock,
and today it's aged a bit, and it's gotten a bit of grey and white in there now. It's become a little bit more.
It's more respectable,
but
not particularly respectable, I would say.
And so, where do you see chiropractic sort of going in Australia at the moment? So, are they producing enough chiropractors in Australia at the moment? Is it a growing area? How would you describe it?
It's it's a little hard to say. There's it's a little hard to say because the chiropractic course in Victoria was just axed about a month ago.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's wow. So there's no new intake. So the people who are in it will finish, but the osteopathic course hasn't been axed, and I just find that really weird because chiropractors have a higher profile than osteopaths. I think that there's so much change in the world with just the way we do things, the internet, and just how things will be in 10 years, how things will be in 20 years. I actually have no idea. I really have no idea.
But Australia is a little bit unique, isn't it, in the sense that if you went to Europe, or I can't remember where I heard this before, that chiropractic looks different. It's a different, it's called something different, or it's part of being a GP, or, how is it in other countries? Is it similar to what it is in Australia?
Well, I guess chiropractic and osteopathy both came from America, and so there are hundreds of thousands of chiropractors in America. Osteopathy became really big in England, and partly I think the royal family got interested in osteopaths, and so they kind of gave them some sort of profile. Homeopathy, which is not chiropractic, that became really big in Germany because Hitler was really keen on it,
right?
And he elevated it, and because it was kind of effective, though it has a lot of critics, it attained a position. I don't really know how chiropractic is found in Europe. I just don't know.
That's right.
I know that it's quite active in Japan.
In America, like you said.
But America, that's the home of it, and it's huge there.
Yeah, okay.
So I wanted to recap on some of the things you've said. So if we're looking at, for our listeners, a health plan or a wellness plan heading out from now to, as they get older, some of your comments are, get involved in team sports, because then, there's a reason to be going, because you've got to support your team. Do you know what I mean?
It's fun.
And it's fun. Yeah, and it's good for you. If you're going to go to the gym, then look into whether it's worth getting a trainer for the same reason. Make sure you're doing it correctly, but also there's someone there that's actually waiting for you. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to be going and being accountable.
They make the plan. They give you the plan that you then follow, and maybe it gets updated every year or two. But you're not going, what do I know about this? Nothing, so I'll make a plan for myself. You have a professional who
actually shows you what to do.
Yeah.
And then again, same thing, yoga. Yoga's good. Again, you've got a teacher there that's actually going to be showing you what to be doing. Yeah. And then you said some of the things that are really important to be challenging on a regular basis is, your strength, your flexibility, and your cardiovascular system.
And your balance.
Yeah. Would that come in with flexibility, or is it, I guess it's two different things really? So.
No, it's two really different things. Michael Mosley, he has a really good balance exercise, and that is to brush your teeth standing on one leg. Which is quite challenging, because like I can stand on one leg and pretend to brush my teeth, and I'm pretty good at standing on one leg. But if I'm brushing my teeth and standing on one leg, I'm doing two different things.
Yes.
And there's competition in my brain, and it's harder. Of course, young people like you would find no difficulty at all. But so that's a really, because if you brush your teeth in front of a mirror, then that's something that you habitually do. So you don't have to think about doing it. If you lock something like a balance exercise into that, then you've got a program for life.
Yeah.
And that's really helpful, because when you start to lose your balance, then you're losing your balance. Like you've lost a lot more than you think.
What percentage do you think of our listeners are going to go home tonight and clean their teeth on one foot?
Oh, 100%. 100%, without fail.
So we've got that. So challenge your strength, challenge your flexibility, challenge your cardiovascular system, and challenge your balance. And then also, keep in mind your diet, and you can't, understate the ability that walking just 10, 15, 20 minutes a day can actually help to someone's longevity and their overall health and wellness.
Being active, having the milk at the bottom of the fridge.
Yeah.
Putting some things in high cupboards.
So, Rod, a question we'd like to ask all of our guests is, if you were going to write a book, what would the book be about, and what would the title be?
Well, I have thought about writing a book, though I don't know if I will. But I've actually sketched out a whole lot of pages, really about just the number of different things that I do or that I've learned, and wanting to be able to pass that on to others who might be interested.
So particularly in chiropractic or just in general?
Chiropractors or health professionals.
Yes.
It's got to do with kinesiology as well as chiropractic. And the title of the book would be Permission to Push the Envelope.
Nice. I like that.
It's definitely a little bit more unique than 100 tips from Rod.
Go Rod.
101 Rodisms.
That's great.
Yeah, I like that. And the other question we like to ask our guests is, if you could get back and talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you say to them?
Well, I've kind of covered those. Find a mentor.
Yeah.
Join BNI as you begin. Find a business partner. I mean, I'm really serious about that.
Yeah.
Because it's actually been, the business side has been quite painful at times.
Yes.
And the chiropractic side's been wonderful.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's what I'd say to myself.
Yeah. Maybe also don't ski so fast and try to get as many injuries.
Don't hit the rock and have 5 months off work. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Well, look, we've really enjoyed having you, and just thank you so much for coming along. We often talk about investments and we often talk about finances, but today, as we head towards Christmas and the silly season, to actually take a break and talk about investing in yourself, and investing in your own health and wellness, I think is quite important. It particularly spoke to me when you talked about that idea of clients that have come to you who are really well set up financially, who have done all the ththings that they've needed to do, but they haven't invested in their health and wellness. And like you said, it's not saying it starts when you're 50. It's at 29. You're at your peak, and you're heading down from there. So it's important to keep that regular movement and keep that regular balance, and all the different things we talked about to actually be doing, so that when you do get to retirement, you can actually have both your finances and your health in order.
Definitely.
Fantastic. Well, look, everyone out there, thank you so much for listening again. As always, at Help My Wealth, Money Rules, we like to talk about empowering your financial future. Today, we have talked about empowering your health future. So I hope that's been good for you, and we look forward to seeing you again next time in the new year. Thank you, and bye for now.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
The information discussed by the Help My Wealth and the Money Rules podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only, and is general in nature, and it is not advice. It is not intended as a substitute for professional finance, legal or tax advice. It is aimed to provide a general understanding of each topic and should not be relied upon to make an investment or financial decision. It is strongly suggested that you seek professional advice regarding your own individual circumstances before making a financial decision. Help My Wealth and the hosts of the Money Rules podcast are not aware of your personal financial circumstances. Before making any financial decisions, you should read the product disclosure statement and, if necessary, consult a licensed financial professional. Do not take financial advice from a podcast. In the spirit of reconciliation, Help My Wealth and the Money Rules podcasts acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to past, present and emerging elders. We extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today.